Johnny Ray, wants to update us on a story, a case that we probably haven't talked about in years. I mean, I barely even remember who this guy is. Jose Padilla is his name, or Padilla, depending on where you're from.
Yeah, I said Padilla first, but
for a long time. Mark corrected me.
Said that the family.
Yeah, the right way to say the name is Padilla. There's no doubt about it.
That's the Hispanic version of the name.
For whatever reason, this family pronounces the name Padilla. And
like Amarillo.
Well, it's their name. They get to pronounce it how they want, right?
Amarillo.
So, I got it.
Jose Padilla. What is happening with this guy, and who was he? Who is Jose Padilla? Wasn't he accused of some terrorism?
Yeah.
And then held in like horrifyingly inhumane conditions in some federal prison, awaiting trial
for 3.5 years. This is the Sun Sentinel, which I guess is Florida.
Florida, yep.
Jose Padilla sentenced to 21 years in terrorism case. Paula McMahon, Sun Sentinel. Jose Padilla, the Broward County man convicted of terrorism, conspiracy, and support charges, was resentenced today, to 21 years in prison, nearly 4 more years than his original punishment. Prosecutors had recommended a prison term of 30 years, but already conceded in court filings that a sentence of 4 months less was legally permissible. Padilla nodded and gave a brief smile to his family as he was led into the federal courtroom in Miami. He kept his head bowed for most of the sentencing and barely interacted with anyone, including his lawyer, federal public defender Michael Caruso. Dressed in beige jail scrubs, Padilla wore shackles and was handcuffed to a chain around his waist. When the judge asked if he wanted to speak on his behalf, Padilla responded in a low voice, "No, Your Honor." But his mother, Estella LeBron of Plantation, condemned the government's treatment of her son, who his lawyers said was abused while imprisoned awaiting trial.
I think it's pretty inarguable.
He was.
They had him like his hands and like mittens. They had like blinders on him so he couldn't see where he was going.
There's a photo
deprived him of sleep.
Yeah, there's a photo of him being taken to a dental visit, I think, and he's got earphones on and goggles so that he can't see because he's specifically being subjected to sensory deprivation. Bizarre.
Now that can be fun, by the way. Sensory deprivation. They actually have tanks for that, like sensory deprivation tanks.
Yeah, you can pay for that, but
so
in this case he wasn't.
No, it's probably not fun when they're forcing it on you in the way they were. But sensory deprivation isn't always a bad thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
Jose has been tortured in his own land, LeBron told the judge. His mind is not there. I don't care what anyone says. Jose's mind is gone.
Wow.
LeBron reminded the judge that Padilla was born and raised in the U.S. The way they treated him, you don't even treat an animal like that. In the United States of America, we have a constitution, and we have to follow the laws.
Apparently not.
One of Padilla's
all they have to do to get around this whole laws, constitution thing is just call someone an enemy combatant. And then you can write all kinds of things that can happen to that individual that are extra legal.
Right, and that's exactly what they did to Padilla.
Mm-hmm.
One of Padilla's younger brothers, Tomas Texidor of Tamarack, sobbed and paused frequently to compose himself as he talked about how the brother, who was his father figure and role model, has been destroyed by torture and isolation over the last 12 years. Texidor said it's as if his brother has passed away. When family visited him at the federal detention center in Miami, Texidor said Padilla only expressed concern for them, not himself. He would just tell me, "Why are you here? You don't need to do this to yourself. I'm okay." So now he's at a Supermax facility, and he's kept in a cell, which is about the size of a small bathroom. I think he gets 5 hours of sunshine a month or something, but he's basically 24 hours kept inside this small bathroom. I'm assuming it's windowless. And it sounds horrifying to me. Jose Padilla he grew up in the U.S. In his youth, he became a member of the Latin Kings in Chicago. And he kicked another gang member in the head who died from being kicked in the head. So on account of that, he's often referred to as a murderer. And that's one of the reasons why, even though there was no real evidence to show that he was contemplating any kind of terroristic acts, the fact that he had been convicted and jailed for manslaughter
certainly didn't look good.
that's why they want to give him 30 years. Because of his heightened level. And this is a quote from, I don't know, the judge or who, but a quote from the proceedings from, I think, one of his earlier court appearances was that his first sentence didn't take into account his heightened level of dangerousness. I'm sorry, that phrase really jumped. What's the phrase? It jumped out at me because it was just such.
It sounded fine to me. Now, what you're saying is that they brought his sentence up. He now is sentenced more because they're claiming he's more dangerous than they thought he was. His brother's saying his mind has been ruined by being tortured. Are they really saying this guy's a real threat at this point?
They're not resentencing him for how his prison experience has been since his conviction. They're resentencing him because, for whatever reason, they feel that he wasn't sentenced enough at his conviction. And unless he has done something more, he wouldn't be. It wouldn't have anything to do with his behavior in prison. This is only up to that point.
From NPR. A federal court in Miami has added 4 years to a sentence handed down in 2007 on Jose Padilla, who was convicted on charges of conspiracy and supporting Al-Qaeda.
Wow.
That's Al-Qaeda. The Associated Press says the new sentence was imposed by U.S. District Judge Marcia Cook, who originally gave Padilla more than 17 years in prison. She also previously gave Padilla, a U.S. citizen and Muslim convert, credit for the more than 3 years he was held without charge as an enemy combatant at a South Carolina Navy brig. And
so he was supposedly given credit
for time
the first
served.
time around, and then she just went ahead and slapped another 4 years onto this guy?
I'm a little confused. I think that she simply took away the credit she had given him for time served, and that has turned 17 years into 21 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the timeline has confused me a little bit.
Because shouldn't a judge not be able to go and increase a sentence? I mean, if a judge makes a decision that you should get this sentence, son, or whatever, shouldn't at that point, if anything changes, the sentence simply just be lowered? Like, if the judge missed some sort of important fact or something in considering the sentence, too bad. You made the decision it's only supposed to be 5 years, and now you want to make it 15 or 10 or whatever.
I don't know about whether I'd
out.
call that a hard and fast rule, but I would say in this circumstance, not giving a man time served who's served time. I don't understand why they have an option. If a person served been in jail, been incarcerated, then they should be credited for that time, shouldn't they? Oh yeah, that incarceration doesn't count. We have new special incarceration for you.
Well, a lot of times it does count. I've never seen it not count.
Except for this time.
Well, Johnny Ray didn't seem real clear on that.
Like I said, I am a bit confused. According to the AP, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in 2011 determined that Cook erred in giving Padilla credit for the brig years and also failed to properly account for his, quote, heightened risk of dangerousness.
So a higher court came back on her, is what you're saying?
Yes. Who created the...
I don't know.
Who appealed it?
Must have been his attorneys.
Yeah, and I guess they weren't expecting what they got.
Apparently not. This is one of the problems with appeals. They can come back on you.
But Padilla was a gang member in Chicago. He was in prison, maybe for this manslaughter that he had committed, and he converted to Islam. He started going to this mosque. Then he spent some years in the Middle East, where all they know that he did was that he got married, and he did, I think, maybe some humanitarian things. He went from country to country, but there's no evidence to show that he was at a quote terrorist training camp.
Johnny Ray, you've been telling us about the resentencing or the adjusted sentence of one Jose Padilla, and there was something you reminded us about right before we were coming back from break that I thought was worth reminding our listeners about, taking us back in time to when the
2007,
when the jury came back with a verdict about Jose Padilla. After many years of waiting for it to actually go to trial, it finally did. And then how was it that they delivered the verdict, or what was the circumstance there?
The jury appeared, and they were all color coordinated. The first row, everybody in the first row was wearing red, everybody in the second row was wearing white, and everyone in the third row was wearing blue. So these people were all very patriotic, and they were sending a message to the world that they were gonna
don't mess with America.
Right. Well, I mean, you can
we'll
see.
convict you even though there's no evidence.
Well, you have to sort of look at the zeitgeist of the time, right? Like, so, during the Red Scare, lots of people were caught up and
saying the zeitgeist of the time is repetitive.
Thanks. And
the zeitgeist, because zeitgeist means spirit of the times.
Indeed. Looking at the spirit of the times, one can see, like during the Red Scare, people got caught up in this that had, nothing to do. Some of them weren't even liberal that were caught up in the Red, in these trials and the tribulations of the Red Scare. Obviously, in the Salem witch trials, there were lots of women who weren't witches that were convicted, tried, burned at the stake, these kinds of things. These things happen when societies are whipped up about something. And it's difficult to know what happened with Jose Padilla, whether or not he was in any way, shape, or form, even unhappy with the United States' foreign policy. We don't really know what he was going on with, but you would have been in a very difficult position trying to be the juror that says, I have a reasonable doubt at this time. Juries tend to convict anyway, which I find very interesting, that far fewer than 1% of cases make it to trial, and then juries convict at about a 66% percentage rate, which says to me that either A, the criminal justice system is highly efficient, like makes a mistake far fewer than 0.01% of the time, or we have a prison industrial complex that just devours innocent people.
Sounds like the latter.
The evidence against Padilla consisted of 3 items: 7 intercepted telephone conversations, which the prosecutors were trying to say contained code words for jihad. But he was talking about his marriage, because while he was in the Middle East, he had married an Egyptian lady, and talking about his troubles learning Arabic. He was trying to learn Arabic.
It can't be easy.
Right. The next piece of evidence was a 10-year-old video of Osama bin Laden, and an alleged.
That's somehow evidence against him?
I think it was simply used to whip up emotion against him. Yeah, whip up the jury. And the third piece of evidence was an alleged application to a Mujahideen training camp with Padilla's fingerprints.
Well, that sounds like the most damning of them all, right?
Yeah. I imagine a scenario where Padilla is shackled is shackled. He's half out of his mind, and people are putting things into his hands.
Sure.
That's just what the scenario that suggests
Certainly
itself
could
to
be.
me.
Why not?
I guess that's a reasonable doubt, isn't it?
Yeah. And anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about it, Ian.
I appreciate the update on that story.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about it in a long time.
It's strange. As you can see, I still can't make heads or tails out of it. An appeal took his sentence from 17 years to 21 years. I think they just want him to make sure that he breaking his mind isn't good enough for them, and they want to make sure that he dies in prison.
How old was he when he went in? In his 30s?
He's 43 now.
40s.
He's been there for 12
30s.
years.
12 years. Jeez, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Share your thoughts with us here, toll free at 855-450-FREE. Should they put Jose Padilla in jail? Are you happy about this? Give him 20 more years while you're at it. Are you one of those people? You want to share your thoughts? We'd love to hear from you. 855-450-FREE. Screw it that there's no evidence whatsoever. Get in the red, white, and blue get-ups, folks, and let's put these people away. Just insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
that should have been in
it's been
evidence
so
right
long.
there.
I barely remember anything about the case, but
We've hit the high points here.
Yeah,
We've gone over all the basics.
Well, I can tell you, fingerprints on a Mujahideen training camp application isn't.
How does that work anyway? Can you leave fingerprints on a piece of paper?
Sure can.
I guess I don't know
Absolutely.
enough about
paper actually holds fingerprints better than just about anything.
Oh, that's amazing.
The thing is you generally can't get police to take fingerprints. Like if you have something stolen and you want them to take fingerprints, they just won't do it.
Well, right. Like normally when and I'm glad that you gave that information because, in the movies, they never take fingerprints off of pieces of paper. It's always a piece of glass or, something shiny where there's a smooth surface where it'll be obvious that a print has been left.
No, it's from oil on your hands, and paper holds the oil better than anything.
I'll be damned. But you'd think that the paper would diffuse the oil somewhat, but I guess not, huh? It's still in the shape of the print. Interesting.
Yes, I do have a couple more notes to add. Padilla was originally charged with a conspiracy to detonate a dirty bomb, a nuclear dirty bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, and those charges were dropped. There was nothing
because he never
to
had
that.
such a thing.
Right, and then so what he ended up being charged with and getting 21 years in a small windowless bathroom was for conspiracy because they convinced a jury that he was thinking about committing some kind of terrorist act.
I think conspiracy charges are a terrible thing. It's punishing people for not doing anything, for planning to do something. What if they were to change their mind at the last moment? Shouldn't people have that freedom, the freedom to change their mind?
First is the deed.
In what second?
First and only is the deed.
We'll come back with more. This is Free Talk Live, 855 450 free. Nathan, other thoughts? Anything else you want to share? Go ahead.
Well, in the Padilla story, there's something I've always believed, and I don't necessarily have a lot of practical argument to back it up, but I've always thought that you can tell how someone would treat you by the way they treat those weaker than themselves. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they would torture someone like Padilla makes me think that if they thought they could get away with it, then they would want to torture you and me.
They sure would. Thanks for the call tonight, Nathan. It's a happy note.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.